Welcome to the Extra Time Podcast, where you'll hear sports stories you might not have heard about from people you might not have heard of. Let's get into this week's show.
A very warm spring welcome in to the Extra Time Podcast today, and we're still in that real sweet spot of sport. It's sporting Christmas for me. I'm absolutely obsessed. Cannot waste a minute. There's sport everywhere around the place, all times of the day, and how good is that? As usual, I'm your host, Aidan Box, and I'm joined by my good friend Mark Woods. Woodsy, how you going?
I'm going well, and it is the finals time, and it feels like Christmas when you're a sports fan.
And not lucky enough to have just sport going on, but some incredibly good company today. Friend of the show and Mulgrave Premiership legend, Noah Fisher. How lucky we are to have him along today. Fish, how you going?
Not too bad, mate. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, and I think we should just dive straight into the sport because we've got a pretty big show today, a lot of codes to talk about, and a lot of distance to cover around the world where they're all being played. Woodsy, you've been following the Davis Cup quite closely. How have we been going?
Well, I actually have been following closely. It's something that excites me. I think the country versus country aspect to it. Wasn't able to get into the US Open, but the Davis Cup held in Manchester for our leg, which I'll get into. But 16 countries are playing off in it, or they were playing off in it, and it's now down to 8. We were up against France, England, and Switzerland. We lost our first game against England 1-2, losing the first 2 rubbers in the tie, so 3 rubber tie. Kind of made the third game irrelevant. However, we needed to win the next 2 against France and Switzerland. We came up against France, and we lost the first match, but we were able to win the following 2 matches to win that tie, and then beating Switzerland 3-0. So we were able to progress, and we progressed to play Czech Republic in the the quarterfinals, and the elimination finals will be in Malaga, Spain in November, so it'll be November 21 to 26. But the Davis Cup, I'm sure when we get Josh on next week and grill him more about it, but it's a bit of a controversial thing in the fact that when you get to the finals, there's 16 teams competing in it. They break off into 4 groups, and then they play off at one host city. So this time it was Manchester, England. I know there was a bit of talk and criticisms about that. I think Stan Wawrinka from Switzerland was playing a tie against France, and he did a social media post, a video, basically going around showing the crowd, and it was almost empty. And I know Andy Murray spoke about it, and all the publicity has been about them. You wouldn't know who the other 3 teams are playing, or the fact that there are top-level athletes playing there for the other countries.
Well, you talk about top-level athletes, and that is something, you're right, where people may not be aware how good the tennis is and who's actually over there and how easily you can go in and access what is world-renowned and one of the highest-level competitions in the world. So what sort of athletes are over there? Who's representing the green and gold?
So representing the green and gold is Alex de Minaur, Max Purcell, the great man Kokkinakis, and Matthew Ebden in the doubles. Thompson is also there, but he didn't play in Manchester. However, obviously in May, and it is interesting to note we actually finished runners-up at the last Davis Cup in 2022, losing to Canada in the finals. So we are a shot.
Exactly. And just in case you were thinking, oh, those names aren't that good, there's several top 100 current players in our squad. And then you mentioned Wawrinka and Murray, former Slam champions.
Well, I'm looking at the Australian squad, and they're all within the top 100. So you're actually right. There are 4 with Matthew Ebden, who's 8 in the double rankings. So, I mean, we've got a lineup which would pretty much rival most. I mean, we've got our captain, or the coach, non-playing captain, is Leighton Hewitt. So another great name in tennis. But I'm looking at the other squads, and yes, you've got Serbia, which have all top 100 players as well. And that would probably be one of the biggest ones to actually look out for, I would say, because it's got Djokovic. But I'm looking at the squads, and there's a lot of top 100s, and then a few other ones that, I mean, Canada's squad, this one, the highest player is 31, and then next best is 158, all the way down to 1248. So going to show you the depth of some squads compared to others.
Yeah, a lot of people think, the US ends, the US Open, and tennis sort of ends until January the next year when everyone comes down to Melbourne Park. But it's actually wrong. There's actually tournaments like the Davis Cup that can rival a slam in their quality. So I know that a lot of eyeballs are probably drawn away at the moment with the time zones it was played in and the other sports that are around, but keep your eyes on that because we're a genuine chance. We've got a great squad and it's some incredible tennis to watch later this year. But another sport that probably is taking a lot of eyeballs, I mentioned he's a premiership player, so he knows what he's talking about. Fish, you've been following a bit of cricket lately.
And there's a lot of cricket to talk about, Boxy. Obviously, Australia playing South Africa in a 5-match ODI series. Unfortunately, Mitch Marsh's men fell short in that, losing 3-2. But one player I do really want to touch on is Marnus Labuschagne. Now, he was the sub for the first game. I don't think you guys have already touched on this in the last podcast, but he's got a critical 80 coming in for Cam Green, and then followed it up with 124 in the second match, which is quite remarkable, seeming he was not even picked in the World Cup squad as it is.
Well, there's just something about this guy and being the concussion sub. I think if he played AFL, you'd lock him as a sub every week and you'd have 30 still, because we know his incredible test career started for coming in for Steve Smith in a hostile environment at Lords against Jofra Archer. And he might not have made a massive score that day, but that set him up to be, as he was, the number one world test batsman only a few months ago. And we did discuss it last episode, Woodsy. I think we have to have him in. I'm not sure if they've officially named him in the World Cup squad, but he made 100, I think, as well. He made that critical 80, and he's one of the best, the top 10 talents in the world with the bat. So it'd be very interesting to see when the World Cup comes around and the first week of October whether he's in the squad or not.
Yeah, to me, he's an automatic lock. I mean, you mentioned those scores, 283 for the season. It's just, or for the series, I should say, not for the season, but he's one of those, I mean, you look at all his training drills and whatnot, he's a bit of a nut when it comes to that. But that's what makes good cricketers. It reminds me of Donald Bradman doing the stump and the golf ball in the backyard, that kind of attitude to cricket. And, I mean, that's what you need when you're at that level. So he's almost a lock for me.
And, I mean, we obviously played India pretty recently in the Whites. And we saw him before that series for months on his deck. And he got a big black, pitch. And he was making sure the ball would spin and trying to acclimatise for the conditions. Didn't have an amazing series over there, but that's the sort of stuff he does, and everybody loves him around the squad. So another person that made a few runs and is a big story is David Warner, Fish.
Yeah, so David Warner, 206 runs in the series versus South Africa. But one thing I do want to touch on is, so obviously Marnus led the whole series in runs with 283, but then South Africa had the next 4 highest run scorers, with Warner being the 5th, with 206 runs. Obviously, a lot of criticism with the whites, I guess, being on. It wasn't quite dominating with the red ball. But that's saying he's always been consistent in his white ball cricket and coming around to what probably will be his last World Cup. I'm just really looking forward to see how he goes. But I guess the big loss for Australia is going to be Travis Head. Obviously, he's been ruled out for the World Cup. So how do you boys see that affecting the lineup?
I think Marnus will have to come straight in, but he's just not quite as damaging. There's not many players in world cricket that can come in at 5 and take a game away from an opposition like Travis Head. And he plays spin quite well. Obviously, the World Cup's in England. In India. I've had a mare there.
Last World Cup was in England, remember that?
Yeah, I try not to remember
I'm the
that.
old one here. I'm the memory loss one.
And anyway, I think it now all rests on the health of Glenn Maxwell. I think if we're able to get him in, I think Head's loss isn't anywhere near as big as if we can't get Glenn over there.
I was actually just about to mention that last podcast, we spoke about who would you be taking, Marnus or Maxwell. Well, with the injury to Travis Head, it looks like, there might not be need for that discussion because both of them can go, but it all rests on if Maxwell is actually right or not.
It's just, and there's a lot of ways, and that's what's so beautiful about cricket. There's so many ways you can make up your 11, and maybe they're going to go with Zampar, maybe they go with Maxwell as well, maybe they just go with one spinner sometimes and then an extra batsman. But I back us in. I think we've got enough options. Ashton Agar's in the squad as well, It's obviously not as great with the bat as Head is because he's more of a bowling all-rounder. But, I mean, Ash has got the ability to do the same sort of thing with the bat, and his left arm off is a serviceable. So there's a lot of ways we can go with it. But Trav, I mean, yeah, I think he's still in the top 5 in the rankings in most grades of cricket. So big loss, but I think we'll be okay. And his South Australian mate Alex Carey made a few runs as well. So that's another thing where we'll be all right, and we've still got a few decent left-handers left.
But I'd have to say, I just think the issue hasn't actually been our batting. It's been the batting collapses, if I'm being honest. I think we lost 8 for 60, 5 for 67, and 8 for 69. Which is just remarkable.
That last one with the series on the line was incredible. I think it was Clarkson who took about 4 wickets in no time at all.
They just honestly just ripped through us, and to lose wickets in that clump is just shocking. And you know, if you lose one, you've got to settle. We have seen it all before, and something obviously with the World Cup just around the corner that I guess it's good we have these warm-up games to try get it right, and you kind of hope coming into the World Cup that this is something that they can touch up on in the nets.
And yeah, I guess we get sick of seeing it because Australia has collapsed so often, and I'm not sure why it is, but the thing that worries me is the lights only get brighter, the crowds only get bigger, and they're not going to be cheering for us. They're going to be, you know, Indian fans that are used to go on the IPL and absolutely going ballistic for their boys in blue. So I know we might not be playing against India, but we feel like we will be, and that can get into the heads of a lot of our players, and a lot of the team is young. It's not like, you know, in 2015, obviously we love talking about that because we won it at home, but that team was a lot different. There was a lot of senior players. This team has them still, but a lot of our senior players are bowlers outside David Warner and Steve Smith. And that's not really going to help you when the batsmen are all young guys just trying to make their way, and they can get nervous. And sometimes, you know, the way cricket goes, if you're not quite on with your mindset, a ball can just turn and rip through you, especially in India.
Well, I actually love that you mentioned the crowd. I reckon that's going to be one of the biggest factors. India love their cricket, so I reckon every game, if it's not already sold out, it would be. So when they lose 1 or 2 wickets, that's when the crowd rises. You don't get that in Australia or nearly anywhere else. So, I mean, if you watch the cricket when it's being played over there, the amount of noise is just, it's something else. Like, I think of Boxing Day tests is something, grand finals in the AFL is something, but Indian and cricket, it takes it to the next level. So when there's batting collapses, it's just, it's got so much more.
They have those horns and everything. There's this music going on. It's an absolute frenzy. And like you said, if you lose a couple of quick wickets, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. The crowd's just going to love it because there's stuff going on. And I think we can't discredit South Africa after getting convincingly belted in the T20 series and then losing the first 2 games to come out and win the next 3 and then bowl so well. And they're bowlers that aren't well known. Like, it wasn't just Rabada going in. They don't have Morkel and Stain anymore. Yeah. They just keep producing these quicks, and even their spinners are quite good. So for me, I actually reckon they're a dark horse. I think Bavuma actually leads really well. He's not the biggest man, but he's got a massive heart. So they're one to watch out for as well.
I have to say, though, my favourites to take out the whole tournament, it's going to hurt Australians to say this, but I think England are by far my favourites to take it out. They just played New Zealand in a one-day series over there. I'm not sure if you guys remember when Ben Stokes sent Mo and Ali the WhatsApp saying Ashes, ? Well, Joss Butler definitely did the same to Ben Stokes saying World Cup. Came out of retirement and just casually whacked 182 against New Zealand at the Oval just to, you know, casually come back into one-day cricket. They set New Zealand 369 to win in that first game at the Oval, and casually won by 181 runs. Well, Ben Stokes said, I've done mine, don't need to play in the second game, but they casually again won by 100 runs. So they're looking very good, and they've got players like Creepy Crawley, who's actually going to be captaining the 3 one-day series against Ireland, and Joe Root was touching on how excited he is to play under his leadership. So I think England, for me, they're just looking really good.
And they're big games, because we know what happened in 2019 between these two same sides, and it's not like New Zealand would have just let them win. England are a serious force, and they play all their cricket the same way, so they're well informed. They might have been playing with the red ball, but they play that stuff the same way as the white stuff. So just incredible. And now they've welcomed back what I think is this generation's best white ball player ever. I think his resume, it's no one really matches it. Ball and bat, leadership, winning it winning World Cups for his side off his own bat. Just, I love him, and I hate England. And I know you guys have ties to England, and it's weighed on that side of the table is a bit topsy-turvy, but because I hate them. But I genuinely love Ben Stokes because he's just the epitome of exactly what you want as a leader in your team. And the thing I love the most is that he was done with it. He's like, I'm just going to play Test cricket. I'm going to be a real leader in that team and take us forward. And then he's like, you know what, I sort of miss it. I might just come back and might come back and have a field, have a bit of a run around. I just might whack 182 coming in at about 5, if you don't mind. And he doesn't even need to do that because their batting lineup up the top is insane as well. They've done it before, and they're going to be an absolute force. I do think, though, are the Indian conditions going to just pull them back a little bit?
Well, I think India have definitely got to be favourites in that regard. But talking about Ben Stokes, I think the fact that he's done it time and time again, you've seen it in the Ashes, you've seen it when, they were down and out, they looked defeated, and he was able just to keep going. You've seen it in the one-day stuff, as you've mentioned, but he's probably one of the best modern-day cricketers up there with Kohli and Smith. I don't think there's any debate about that.
And another name that is usually in that awesome foursome is Kane Williamson. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's been injured for a while and he's battling to be able to make the World Cup, which is horrific for New Zealand and their fans, because he's another one, when he gets going, he can bat anywhere in the world and make as many runs as he wants, and he really drives New Zealand with the bat. So they're going to miss him a little bit. I think they'll still do all right. They've got some awesome bowling options, spin and pace, but that's going to hurt them a lot, and that's probably the reason why England were able to take care of them so easily.
So I'm actually going to touch on some red ball cricket in the county championship. Obviously, a lot of Australians are over there playing in the county championship Div 1 and Div 2. So obviously we've had Marnus and Michael Nessa at Glamorgan. We had Marcus Harris at Gloucestershire. And I think an unsung hero for me has to be Sam Whiteman. He plays for my team, Northampton, my boys. And let's be honest, Northampton have really struggled this season. Only one win for the season, collecting only 4 batting points. I think that's if you get over 250 runs, I believe, in the first innings. That's how poor they've actually batted. And Sam's actually gone on to score 719 runs, a tick over 35. Now, that has got to be an incredible effort for a team that's rock bottom, almost certain to get relegated. They're playing Surrey at the moment, who are top and look like they're going to win it. They're on 202 points. And then they go to Essex, which they're second on 179 points. So they've got to win 2 games. It doesn't get much easier than that. And Sam's actually just come home because obviously the Shield season starts off. But he's one that you don't hear a lot of media about, someone that's actually done incredibly well over in those conditions. But another one who's gone under the radar is Peter Hanscom. Just obviously re-signed for Leicestershire on a 2-year contract, and he's someone that's played all 3 formats for Leicestershire and has done incredibly well. And he's someone that we've seen in the past, in India especially, score big runs.
He's, in football terms, I've always thought of Peter Hanscom as that really, really good twos player that when he gets a chance in the seniors or the national side for cricket, just isn't the same. But he's definitely got the talent to be able to be that. So the coach keeps picking him, and he just quite can't make it stick. But in the twos or in the county stuff and the Shield stuff, you mentioned all formats, he's a great player, and he's really valuable for any team he has. And Sammy Whiteman, on the other hand, I love him, former Scorcher, big Scorchers fan myself, and I think he's going to tear the Shield season apart. Is he still at WA?
Yeah, he's still captain at WA, I believe.
Yeah,
So.
And they've become what Victoria used to be for me growing up. They're a real force now, WA. They just keep producing these kids that can do both, bowl quick, make hundreds, and then they've got Sammy Whiteman in form, some great spinners as well, and they're a real juggernaut these days, WA. Still playing out at the Wacker. So it's going to be a great Shield season, but it's great to see some unheralded guys like Whiteman and Pistol get some runs.
100%. And I guess one thing I'll leave it with you guys for cricket is who's winning the World Cup. Obviously, I said England has got to be up there, red hot favourites. Australia, I think, will get their act together and make a late charge. But who do you guys actually seeing taking out the trophy?
Oh, it's hard to go past India. I think they're going to have so much depth, and they just get so fired up. Their home crowd there's no better home crowd to play in front of. England will be tough to beat. I'm probably going to have to go India, and I can see them losing because usually when you tip the team that's obviously favourite. They let you down. But in home World Cups, I think the host sides made it in the last, 4 or 5. At least made the final. And so the last 2 obviously won, us and England. But I'm gonna say this, put it on the record. Don't discount Pakistan. They've really got something. I love Shane Shah-Afridi. Their batsman, obviously world class. Babar, one of the best, and they'll thrive up. They'll get so many fans there as well. So they're probably one of the only nations that can get and sort of level the fan base in India, being so close. And that rivalry, if they play against each other, what a final that would be.
Well, I see India, Australia, England being the top 3. I'm going to go England. Ben Stokes is very much a difference maker in this, and it's hard to go against him, especially like when people go against him, he performs. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. It is 5th of October to the 19th of November. So I'm pretty sure over the next 2 weeks in the lead up to it, we'll be discussing this. We'll probably get Fisher on in 2 podcasts time to have a bigger preview and have a better sense of, okay, where do these teams stand? But, I mean, it's a toss of the coin on, do you go the home side? Do you go England? Do you go Australia, considering their South Africa performance? So it's tough for me. I'm going to have to, as I said, side with England, though, at the moment.
Yeah, obviously we mentioned the squad last week. There's still a lot of things that could change with that. So we'll update you on that when we can as well. But a lot to talk about in the world of cricket, and we're sort of in that little holding period of anticipation before the biggest competition in the sport. So thanks for that, Noah. You can watch out for him in the red and blue as they try and win another flag. They do it a bit down there, I heard. Great club down at Malgrave. What a report that was on the cricket. And now we'll go to more bowling, but this time it's on the lawn. And Woodsy, you've got a bit more on the lawn bowls to talk about.
Yeah, well, we've had the World Champion of Champions event take place on the Gold Coast. Club Robina. Karen Murphy and Jono Davis were our Australian representatives, and unfortunately they weren't able to get the job done. The winners were Wales' Daniel Salmon and the USA's Anne Nunes with, this competition, Champion of Champions, was first held in Australia in Moama, actually, in 2003. We've had 5 men win it, 4 women win it. The 5 men, Leif Selby, Brett Wilkie, Aaron Sheriff, Scott Tholborn, and Lee Schreiner. And the 4 women, Kelsey Cottrell, Karen Murphy, Natasha Scott, and Carly Whitehead. So this was actually Karen Murphy's going for a second attempt, which she would have been the second woman ever to win 2.
And we mentioned last episode that we had the World Championships. For those that don't exactly follow bowls and international bowls too closely, how is the World Champion of Champions different? Is it different?
Yeah, it is different. So the World Champion of Champions, actually, think of it as a pyramid. So at the bottom, you've got every bowler, right? The next level up, you've got every year. Each club has club singles and all that. So the winners of the club singles go to represent their club at their region region Champion of Champions. So from there, the winner of the region Champion of Champions represents their region at the state Champion of Champions. The winner of the state Champion of Champions represents them at the national Champion of Champions. And obviously the national Champion of Champion winners were Karen Murphy and Jono Davis, who went on to represent Australia. So it's not necessarily a person who might have had any representation of their country before. Obviously, past winners all have represented Australia, but it really is a sense of, anybody can do it. The quality, as Karen Murphy and Jono Davis. Karen is obviously retired from the international level, but still represents in this regard. And, the amount of bowls that have to be played to get to this point, you've got to be consistent. So that's why you'll generally see an international level bowler there.
And what a great sport it is, and what a cool tournament that is. We were discussing it off air before the show, and as Woodsy mentioned in one of the first episodes when we discussed bowls, anyone can make that. So watch out for Mark Woods winning that tournament in the future. And that's just how great of a sport and how welcoming of sport it is for anyone, really. And it's great fun get down to Blackburn. I have a few times. It's great to go play down there, and great people too down there, including Mark Woods himself. And we're going to move over to another sport on grass now, and it's the Rugby Union World Cup, which we discussed last week. It kicked off. We were a bit nervous. We won our first game convincingly. Not the best opponent, could be said. And then we had to play Fiji, who I personally reckon is a bit of a sleeping giant. They might not have had heaps of success in the recent years. They're not as big as New Zealand or Australia. They're not a big country. But let me tell you, they love their rugby more than we ever could. I've been over there. I was lucky enough to go over there for a holiday in 2019. Broke up my year 12 year quite nicely, and they're so welcoming. Some of the most beautiful people in the world live in Fiji. And the thing that stuck with me is I was actually lucky enough to meet, as a taxi driver, one of the former Fijian rugby captains, which is just incredible. He was just driving us from our resort to Suva, one of the big cities in Fiji. And he said, yeah, I used to captain Fiji a few years ago. I was a pretty promising player, and he's been all around the world and met some of the greatest stars in rugby union history. And he gave me and my old man just such a great insight into rugby in Fiji. And basically the thing that stuck with me is he said, it's religion to us. And I'm not exaggerating that. He said the things we care about the most is rugby, and then church, and then, life is underneath that. Rugby runs through our veins, and it takes over our lives, and they live and breathe it. And it's more important to them than, government or anything. And I just loved that. We went past Fiji training, and you can just see that. It's like a country grassroots team, not in how big they are, but how well they're followed. It's genuine community of the whole nation behind them, and they play great rugby. They've been improving in the last few years, and I said it before that game. I'm not sure if I said it on air, but I was worried deep down because...
Oh, you did say it. You did say it.
When teams like that have such a following and they generate their own momentum, they only need a little bite. They need a little crumb, and then they can upset anyone in the world. And they did that to us. The first time in 69 years. And they're really something to watch in this tournament. I don't think they're going to get over the top of New Zealand. I think New Zealand are immense, the strength they have. And France as well, being the hosts. But as an Australian, you're flat because, any team that runs out in the green and gold, you want them to win. You expect them to win. But Fiji, hats off to them. I got a pair of shorts from that trip that represent them, and they're pretty good shorts, and I love them. So congratulations to them, but we're in trouble, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, we've got Wales next week, and that's a must-win game, and Portugal, both of them must-win, I should say. We need to keep winning from now on in, and I think in 9 World Cups, dating back to the first edition in 1987, we've never not made it to the quarter-final stage. Our worst performance were 3 losses, so this could very well be the worst performing Rugby Union World Cup that Australia have had. And I think having said that, though, nobody's expecting us to win. The expectations aren't that high with this. You've got the hosts, France and New Zealand. You've got South Africa and England up there. You've got Fiji performing, and Wales is a very strong side as well. I think for me, this is more of a wake-up call in the sense of, is rugby actually going to be there for Australia? Like, are we actually going to perform well? We've got to regroup, refocus, line in the sand now, prepare for the next World Cup, the next 2 or 3 World Cups, and just go, okay, well, there are other sports taking over. The expectations are, that's, I think, one of the biggest talking points I think I've got out of this is, what are the expectations for national teams? You hear the Wallabies, you always expect them to do well, but then when they come against New Zealand in the Bledisloe Cup, you look at how many times New Zealand have held it or beaten us from it. It's like, it's not actually like maybe in New South Wales and Queensland is a bit of different expectation, but as a Victorian, as somebody living in Melbourne, I'm there going, well, I don't hear much news about them, so we mustn't be doing too well.
Yeah, I'm not sure really why it'd be. Obviously, that expectation can grow, it can change and sort of fall and rise. I think it could be the clash between Union and League maybe, and clouding people's vision. Obviously, it's not a massively followed sport, definitely now part of Australia, but it's still a national sport, and for a team that's had so much history, it would be good to see them go out there and get over the top of Wales and Portugal and really revive themselves. It'd be a pretty Australian thing to do that. But it's a big topic, expectations in world competitions, and we've had plenty of them. I said when they're coming out the wazoo this year, the World Cups, here, there and everywhere. And one of those was the FIBA Basketball World Cup, where we came in expecting a medal. We were, in the top 5 seeds going in, and we bailed out there before the finals even got underway in the second group stage. So can expectation sort of kill your momentum? Does it help? It's yet to be answered. And another one where it helped was the Matildas, who weren't, fully expected. It wasn't Australia, so I guess everyone was saying if you can make the final, it'd be pretty cool. But it's not all results driven. I think they've gained momentum and gained expectations from how well they did, even though they didn't win and didn't make the final. And now they're selling out places and they need more seats. So their next game, their next international tie, moved from HBF Park to Optus Stadium. Optus that holds 60k. So that's incredible. Women's sport is on the rise and nobody's complaining. It's incredible.
I think it was a increase of 40,000 seats. So that demand right there is something that shows that hosting a World Cup is actually a benefit because of it's an ongoing thing. I mean, if you had said before the World Cup, the FIFA Women's World Cup, we're going to play a game and we're going to get 80,000. We're going to fill a stadium. It's something that, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought they were playing at parks with less than probably 10,000 people watching to going to a case of selling out tickets and making the demand to go from HBF Park to Optus Stadium. 60,000 is something that they're going truly incredible for the sport and truly incredible for women's sport.
And it's happening in the Premier League as well. I think you were saying off air before, Fish. They all want to see CUNY Cross.
Yes, so the WSL sales are going through the roof. I know the likes of Aston Villa, for example, play games elsewhere at Walsall at the Bescott Stadium. But normally they play 5 or 6 games at Villa Park, and they've actually opened up an extra stand at Villa Park for their first game against Manchester United. So the whole tent is now open, which holds 15,000. They've also got the Trinity Rose Stand open, which again holds 15,000. That could be 30,000 seats possible to be sold for this game. And Arsenal are playing Liverpool at the Emirates Stadium, where the men's play, and they've already sold 45,000 tickets to see actually the 3 Australians to play for Arsenal, which is good. So Steph Catley plays for Arsenal, Caitlin Ford, and now obviously Kara Cooney Cross plays there. But there's also a lot of other Australians that play in the Women's Premier League, like Sam Kerr plays for Chelsea, and Arnold plays for West Ham, and I think there's 11 or 12 of them in total that do actually play in the league, and I believe it's the best league in the standard-wise for women, and it's just great to see everyone getting on board.
And the Matildas girls doing so well as well, and they're all pretty key parts of their respective teams. So that'll lead us quite well into Aussies around the grounds, and there's a lot in this segment today because, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on. We'll stick with soccer, and we'll go back to the Men's Premier League, and our man Ange Postecoglou playing Ange ball with his Spurs. Have you seen that, boys? Pretty incredible.
Saying that, kind of woke up, looked at the score, went, okay, they've won. Dived deeper into it, and I've gone, okay, whoa. As I think Noah will mention in a second on why that was, but it was incredible to see. I think it was the 98th and the 100th minute, which turned out to be, as I've heard, what do you call it?
Stoppage time.
No, it's the 100th minute goal was like the longest. I don't know, what do you call it? It's the highest amount of minutes before a goal was, not before a goal, but
longest
a goal was
time.
scored, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a 100-minute goal was the longest, highest minute.
I think that's for Tottenham. I think that's the Tottenham record, because on the same day, the same match week, Aston Villa played Crystal Palace and scored a 101st minute goal, and then went down as the 6th longest of all time.
Okay,
So it's just incredible to see
They're
this happening now.
pretty exciting to watch too. To open the Premier League season, and I am a fan because Noah got me into what an awesome league and sport it is to follow, and I'm a fan of the Bees, the Brentford Bees, and I watched them against Angers Spurs to open the season, and that was one of the most remarkable and exciting games of football I've ever seen. In the first half, there was about 4 or 5 cards. There was like 4 goals. It was going end to end to end. It was pinging down like an AFL game, and that was Angers' first game, and he's just come in and said, we're going to just revolutionise this a little bit. We're going to play exciting. I don't care if we lose trying to, win and win big. And it was great to watch. And I think it ended in a 2-2 draw, but I didn't really care about the result because I was watching the football, and it was just great to watch both ends, both teams playing really well. And how well has he done without Harry Kane?
Well, what I love about him is it's not just on field. His philosophy is off field. Hearing him speak about Richarlison has been incredible. He's bringing this different perspective to what a manager is in world football and club football, and actually going, you know what, these are players, these are humans, they matter. If you can listen to his press conferences, I strongly encourage it because it is showing that he's got a real care for his players, and I think the players know that. I mean, Richarlison has had mental health issues. I'm not going to go into that side of it, but he scored, and then he assisted in scoring the winner. I think that's truly incredible, that the fact that there's this reward for being actually caring about your players.
Yeah, and it would be absolutely no coincidence that Angers' support and the team support around him has helped him play better football, and half of it is mindset. 80% of any sport is above the shoulders. So what an awesome job he's doing, and all the best to him in the Spurs this season. And in another world of football, over in America, in the NFL, we've obviously still got some pretty good guys over there, one of which is my man Dicko, Michael Dixon, the best to do it in the league at the moment. I might be biased as a Seahawks fan, but they got the job done in overtime against the Detroit Lions. It was a great game, and my man had 3 punts for an average of 50.7 yards and a long of 64. He can really hurl the thing down the field, and he had 2 inside the 20, which went a really long way to holding back Jared Goff and the Lions offense, which really like to throw the heck out of the ball. So that was pretty good. Lou Headley in his second game of NFL, and what a story he is. We've talked about him plenty on the show. He had 5 punts for an average of 42 and a long of 49, and he also had 2 inside the 20 in their Monday Night Football win over division rival Carolina. And the other one we have is obviously Mitch Wishnowsky, who I've just lost the stats on, but he had a very similar game to Michael Dixon for the Niners in their win over the Rams. And him and Dixon, I think they're in about, I think their 4th and 3rd year respectively, or 5th and 6th year respectively. They're just doing it so well, and it's really showing a lot of Australians that anyone can really do it and come through. And there's a real place for Australians in the NFL kicking the ball, because a lot of us grew up doing it. So we've got a lot in the college system, one of which I really want to bring up before we discuss one of the big stories in Australians in the NFL is Paddy Turner, who's one of countless college punters, the Aussie from Ararat. He was playing for Colorado State against Colorado, who, if you follow American football, was a huge game. Big rivalry. Colorado obviously have Deion Sanders, prime time, coaching them with his 2 sons, and they are playing some of the best football the college has seen. They've ignited the whole nation, and it was a very close game. Paddy Turner's Colorado State Rams had the lead for pretty much the whole game, ended up losing in OT, double OT, actually. But I just want to highlight this one play from my man Paddy when his side was down 1 touchdown in the 4th quarter. It was a very, very tight game, and I know we don't have vision, but go search up Paddy Ryder's punt, because it was incredible. He got pressured. He was going to kick it to the left, and he got pressured, and he decided to kick it to the right, and it only went about 40 yards in the air and then hit the deck, and it actually ended up bouncing perfectly and landing inside the 3. So Shador Sanders, son of Primetime, was made to start his drive inside his own end zone in order to tie up the game. So incredible job from Paddy Turner, and he's doing it so well. Another one back in the NFL is Adam Gotsis, who had 3 tackles in Jacksonville's loss to Kansas City. And obviously we've got Falale and Mayalata, who are just tremendous offensive tackles. I do think that Falale will get a bit more game time because the Baltimore offensive line had countless penalties late in their win over Cincinnati. So I'd like to see him get a bit more time, and there's a real role there for him. But the big news is after a strong game where he had 4 punts for 37.5 average, along with 44, Aaron Sipos has been released once again by the Philadelphia Eagles. So
I've got no words there. I think that looking at his stats, though, over the last 2 games, it was career low, apparently. So can't really blame Philadelphia for doing so. 43.4 yards overall average.
And I don't want to be negative towards Aaron because he made the Super Bowl. He punted in a Super Bowl, which not many Aussies can say they've ever done. One of the only Australians to say he's played in one. They ended up losing, unfortunately, but him and Mailata were there. And he's been tremendous. But when you compare his numbers to the likes of Dixon and Wisnowski, there's just that little bit of difference, about 10, 15 yards difference, which really can make a difference. And for those that don't follow NFL, it's not an exaggeration. It's every yard counts, particularly when you're punting and you're giving the ball back to the opposition. Where they start their drive, particularly late in games, can be very crucial. So all the best to him. Hopefully he finds his way onto another roster. But the Eagles have chosen to go a different way. They are 2-0, but there's a lot of expectation on them. They do play in Philadelphia after all, so they're going to try and want to construct their best possible roster, and they believe that's with Braden Mann instead of our man Aaron Sipos, which is unfortunate, but sometimes that's the way it goes.
So obviously for those that are uneducated like myself when it comes to the NFL, where to next for Aaron Sipos? Can he get picked up straight away to a practice squad, or is there a process he now has to take?
Well, I'm not sure how his contract and everything's structured, but I believe he would become a free agent. I'm sure he's looking right now for another team to go to. And I was saying to a few people off there last week, kicker and punter are some of the most replaced positions in the league because they're such an important skill. Kicking more so, but punting as well. Such an important skill, but there's so many that the expectation and the leniency are so close together, and they're very high. So you don't have much. Yeah, you don't have much leniency. If you mess up, it's a lot of the time it's sayonara, see you later. But if you do really well, you can really throw your team a long way towards winning games. But there's 32 teams in the NFL, so he's got a great chance of one of them really liking his play. But the thing is, unlike a lot of positions in the league, you don't usually have more than 2 punters. And if you do have 2, it's not usual because they replace so often. A lot of teams just roll with the one. So he might be looking out for injuries or other roster cuts and able to get back. But I know maybe we'll see him back at the Saints, Woodsy. That might get you to actually win another final. Who knows? But
either that or Denver Broncos. Come on.
Yeah. Either way, all the best to Aaron. He's definitely good enough. But we'll move over now and we'll go to the tarmac of F1, who just had their latest Singapore night race. And I had a mate that went over there, and it was just remarkable. I was a little bit flat because for the first time in 10 races, my man Max Verstappen didn't win. He qualified outside the top 10, missed Q3, and was actually out-qualified by Liam Lawson, the Kiwi, who's obviously driving for our man Daniel Ricciardo at AlphaTauri. Danny was there. He was in person. His hand/wrist is healing quite well. I'm not really sure how many races we'll see him for this year if we do. And I'm not actually even sure what his contract situation is going to be next year. But he's got a great relationship with AlphaTauri and Red Bull. So it's great to see Danny around. Liam doing it quite well in his place. Our man Oscar Piastri, the Aussie that is still in his rookie season, still driving for McLaren. He was snubbed by the great Martin Brundle on the grid walk, which you never see. I saw this vision this morning when we were preparing for the show, and I couldn't quite believe it because Martin is one of the best broadcasters in the world, and his grid walk usually seeks celebrities snubbing him. You never see him snub a celebrity. He's the nicest man, always well prepared, asking all the drivers questions, talking to anyone he can. And he grabbed Oscar as he was coming out to prepare for the race on the track, on the pit straight. And he said, Oscar, how was qualifying? Too unlucky to miss out. And then Esteban Ocon, the French driver, walked past, and Martin just had a little bit of a brain fade and decided he didn't want to talk to Oscar anymore, even though he just talked to him for 2 seconds, literally 2 seconds. And he said, Ocon, Esteban. And he walked away from Oscar. So Oscar just said, oh, well, if you're going to snub me, I'll walk off. And Brundle turned around and Piastri wasn't there. And he felt quite bad. He has come out and apologised for that because it is unlike him. But Oscar took that personally and had an absolutely mega drive under the lights at Singapore, going from P17 to P7. So moving 10 spots up on a hard track to overtake. There was obviously a bit of drama with a couple of safety cars and drivers coming into the pits but McLaren had a great day. Lando Norris finished second, Oscar's teammate, and now man Oscar in the points once again. He's got 42 of them now in his rookie campaign, and over the last couple of weeks especially, he's just showing that he's got everything it takes. I think he'll definitely shake up a world championship in coming years. He's so talented, he's brave, he can overtakes anyone on the track, and he's got all the tools, can defend as well. So it was great to see him back in the points after the 7-time world champion shunted him out of them last week in Monza. So well done to Oscar. He'll head over to Suzuka this Sunday for a 3 p.m. start, Australian Eastern, which is going to be very good for those who follow all the races.
You'll be happy about that, won't you?
Be very happy to not have to stay up all night. And yeah, in Japan, and hopefully Oscar can get some more points there. So that's a bit of F1 wrap for you. We'll go over to more grass, more nicely cut grass over in the golfing world. Minjee Lee, incredible. Another win, this time I'll try and get the name right here, as it's not the easiest name to. Let me get this one really quick for you. The LPGA Tours Queen City Championship in Cincinnati. There you go.
You got it right perfectly.
In great weather, Minjee Lee has taken out that tournament, and what form she is in. She's incredible in the women's golf scene, so congratulations to her. Over on the athletics track, as we really ramping up proceedings ahead of Paris 2024, my man, big Matt Denny, isn't he great to watch? He took out the discus in the Diamond League, which, if you're not sure, and I actually wasn't sure, the Diamond League is basically a one-day competition, one of the biggest one-day athletics invitationals where 14 of the best athletics disciplines all meet in the one place. And Matt Denny threw the discus further than anybody else and got the medal there, along with Nicola Ollislagers. We've talked about her as well. Her and Eleanor Patterson did really well at the World Championships. She took out another silver in the high jump, and what a talent she is. And that's great preparation. I think you'll see a lot more athletics tournaments as we ramp up towards Paris 2024, what an Olympics that's going to be in late July, early August 2024 over in Paris. And I think we'll do quite well there, lads. So that's about a wrap for Aussies around the grounds, unless you boys have anything else to discuss.
I do not.
No, I think I'm done as well. I think obviously the NBA season's starting off, but nothing really to report there. So
yeah, like obviously I think I mentioned it last episode, but Duop Breath, the latest Aussie to be signed to the Portland Trail Blazers. So well done to him, and the NBL as well is kicking off soon. The NBL Blitz is on at the moment. There's a few players to watch out for, and just a name. I'm not going to be able to pronounce his surname correctly, but a name to watch out for in coming years. He's a 7'2" player. He can do it all. He's playing for the Brisbane Bullets this season. Rocco Zivowski, I think it is.
I did see him.
He's incredible. I think he's just might be an 18-year-old, 7'2". He's a bit like Ozzy Wembanyama, so watch out for him for the Bullets this season as the NBL kicks off in coming weeks.
Did you see who has taken the number one season ticket holder of South East Melbourne Phoenix off Mark Woods?
Oh, I was never number one, but I believe that would be Richmond Premiership triple Premiership captain, I should say.
Brownlow
Trent
medalist
Cotchin.
as well.
Brownlow medalist, but yeah, Trent Cotchin. So good to have him on board with the South East Melbourne Phoenix, and hopefully that can get us to our first premiership.
Maybe Woodsy can show him around the place and they can become close mates as they don the green and black and still continue to be the second best team in Melbourne. As United look pretty good this season. We've got our man Delhi back as well. So what a season that's going to be. But that's about all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us here on the Extra Time podcast as well. Fish, thanks for coming in. It's been really enjoyable, mate.
I've had an absolute blast talking sport with you guys. It's always good to have a chat.
And Woodsy will be back here next week, I'm sure, for even more sport as we continue to be in the middle of the bat in terms of international sport in 2023.